Yeah. Hey. All right. Hey. Yeah, I mean.
So we about to take off.
Hey. Please do remain calm. About to run against spitting with a little bit of soul. No times.
Welcome to the Please Remain Calm show. I'm Ben Gonzalez.
And I am Daniel Gonzalez. The Please Remain Calm show.
Yeah, Please Remain Calm podcast, the Please Remain Calm program.
That's the first time I ever heard
the
it
Please
called
Remain Calm YouTube.
that.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get started, as always, folks, the opinions expressed here on the Please Remain Calm podcast are our own. They do not reflect the opinions of the Los Angeles City Fire Department or the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services.
That being said, now that we're indemnified from lawsuits, we appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, telling everybody about the podcast. People call it the show too.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Heard
don't
the
think I've
show
ever
today.
heard anyone call it the show, man.
I
You be
want to
switching
rebrand
stuff up.
us as the Tonight Show, like in that vein. You know what I'm saying?
I'm all right with it, but it just kind of hit me. It hit me a little off.
However you guys do it, but we are pretty much completely listener supported. We don't have an official sponsor yet. We're still working on that, Mark. Yeah, we appreciate the love. The numbers keep going up. We keep getting a lot of shares, trying to crank out these new episodes, and we have another special episode today.
We do. Yeah. Sitting right next to us is the woman who, well, there wouldn't be an us without this lady.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Please Remain Calm podcast. Our mom, Linda Gonzalez.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. We had our dad on episode 41. This is going to be episode 79. We don't have a great explanation for that gap. We would have got you on sooner.
I don't know how he remembers every
I know.
single episode. Yeah, it's the craziest shit to me.
It's a video memory.
Yeah.
He gets it from his mom. It's the same thing.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, like Ben said, we had our dad on a while back. You guys probably remember that episode with some pretty good insights to, late 70s, 80s firefighting and stuff like that. But, I was talking to Ben, we're constantly trying to get guests and find interesting guests, to have on the show for you guys. And we were talking about mom, and I thought it would be a real interesting conversation, not only because my mom is a super interesting person who has done a lot of interesting things and been involved with interesting events and interesting people, world leader type people. But, this being a firefighter paramedic centric show, I thought it would be real interesting to talk to a firefighter wife, who at first was just dating this dude, Benny Gonzalez. And then he became a firefighter, and just like the transition from that, from being, a girlfriend in a quote unquote normal relationship to being in this relationship where half of your spouse's world is dedicated to the city of Los Angeles, basically, or the citizens of LA. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was going to be interesting. And I was thinking, gosh, she has insight on having a son on the fire department and two sons that are paramedics and stuff like that too. So I just thought that would be a real interesting conversation to have. And so I asked my mom if she'd be interested in coming on, and she agreed. And here we are.
Here we are. And you get your hand motions from me too. Talking with your hands.
And I talk a lot
Talking
too,
with
apparently.
your
So
hands. Yeah.
hopefully I get
Yeah.
that from you too.
Okay. So where do you want to start?
Well, when we're saying a very interesting person, interesting life, we should probably go in on some of that and give you more of an intro.
Yeah.
Because when I try to describe stuff that my mom does, or fun facts about my mom, there's
Female Forrest Gump.
there's a lot of stuff. And that's kind of how we describe
kinda
dad
true,
too. Dad's career, and we've kind of talked about that on the show, and we had him on too. It's just he's there for a bunch of things, and our mom is kind of the same thing. Are you a purple belt, or I forgot how?
Well, in which I did 5 different styles of karate. I did about 5. My favorite was Krav Maga. Down and dirty, what it takes. Gouge the eyes.
That's the best shape you ever got in.
Oh, it was the
life
best
too.
shape I was ever in my entire life.
Yeah.
I got to green belt with Krav Maga. My goal was to be a black belt.
Yeah.
And I was going to get my first tattoos when I became a black belt.
But you kept switching.
I was going to get a dragon for the strength and a butterfly or hummingbird for the female me. But I never got my black belt, so I don't have any tattoos.
I think we start even before that and kind of talk about your upbringing.
Well, I'll give you a quick version.
Yeah.
So my dad worked, he got hired in the diplomatic service at a time where there were no Hispanics, especially ones that looked like him. He was Indian, Mexican,
Yeah.
very dark,
Yep.
which is where we get our color from. And he got hired to the Voice of America. So when they went to DC from Phoenix, I was born in Washington, DC. So I was born in Washington, DC. Once he was on the
Voice of America was a radio show, right?
Voice America is the United States platform to broadcast American ideals around the world.
Around the world.
And he was hired to broadcast to Latin America because he was, later on, he was known as the best #1 simultaneous translator. He served 3 administrations. He served the Nixon, first Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon administrations. Yeah. So when they went to Latin America, when they traveled, he went with them, and he was the guy behind the scenes translating into their earpiece what was being said at meetings with Latin American leaders and stuff. So at the age of 2, he was recruited by what's now defunct, the United States Information Agency, which is now got sucked up by the CIA. When
you were age 2?
When I was 2, and he got transferred to Mexico City to be the assistant, the press attaché to the ambassador. The ambassador apparently had called and said, send me someone that speaks the language. So when I was 2, we moved to Mexico City. We were there about 5 years. And then he got transferred to Lima, Peru. There was some turmoil going on in the country. So they sent him to Lima, Peru to be the press attaché there at the embassy.
So all that was already going on in Peru when you guys went there?
There was already rumblings going on. Yeah. So we were there about 2 years, and then the military overthrew President Allende. So from one night to the next, we were evacuated. The families, Dad stayed my dad stayed behind, your grandpa, and to close out the embassy, they tried to salvage and make relations with the new military junta and stuff. Government, but we were evacuated from one night to the next. Yeah. Showed up.
And you're
thank God
9 years old at that time?
I was a couple months before. We arrived on St. Patrick's Day, 1969. So it was a couple months before my 10th birthday.
So from 2 to 9.
I grew up overseas, spoke fluent Spanish perfectly, because even though we went to American schools and stuff, half a day was always Spanish, half a day was English, and you lived in it. But in the house, we always spoke English. Yeah. We spoke English, but all the help was Spanish speaking and stuff. So, yeah. So anyways, then we got evacuated, came here. So basically, I went to 5 elementary schools. Oh, wow. So I learned early on I was always the new kid. You learned to make friends. Yeah. You know, you learned, and when Dad worked for the embassies, part of his job was they held all the cocktail parties when there were visiting dignitaries, when there were new people coming to the embassy. So we learned at an early age, we used to joke that we were like Sound of Music. Yeah. Our nanny, Valentina, would bring us down in our robes, and we were briefed beforehand as to who the guests were. Wow. Whether we curtsied.
As a kid.
Yeah. Whether we curtsied, whether we just, shook our hand, whether we bowed, if they were like some Asian leaders that came and stuff. So we would be brought down to say goodnight, look, it was 5 of us, it's my brother and the 4 girls,
And in your head, you guys were so long, farewell.
we joke about that, but basically that's how it felt,
Wow.
Stuff.
And
shout out to Valentina.
Love her. She just turned 76.
Yeah, just had a birthday.
Right.
So my nanny, we still keep in touch with her. She lives in San Francisco, and she's our second mother. I mean, we still keep in touch.
She's a sweetheart. Yeah, anytime
I'm
we go up there to San Francisco.
Friends with her daughter. Yeah, and I'm friends with her daughter's friends even now too.
So shout out to Patricia too,
Patricia
who runs the mission
Valentina.
Down there, takes care of all the youth in San Francisco.
She's amazing.
Great, amazing people.
She's amazing. Yeah. So anyway, so then from there we came here, but I learned at an early age, PR. Yeah. Basically communications, and
don't make your parents look bad.
Yeah. Foreign affairs. I mean, our conversations at the dinner table was what was going on.
Sure. Yeah.
And before we got evacuated, the school had already been bombed once. There had been a bomb left in the gym. Nobody got hurt and stuff, but we were having Marine escorts of the school buses to the school, to the American school.
Oh, man. Wow.
So and then at one point they decided.
Like 2nd grade, right? Or something?
Third grade. Third grade. Mrs. Drew, my favorite teacher in the world. I'll never forget her in Peru.
Mrs. Drew in Peru.
Mrs. Drew in Peru. She had a zoo in her house.
Mrs. Drew had a zoo in Peru?
Yes, she did. There you go.
Wow.
Are you kidding me? So anyways, and that was, so I was 9, came here. Okay, now mind you, growing up in these countries, we were the Americanos. We were
Yeah.
always the Americans. Didn't matter how dark we got. You're south of the equator, so the seasons are kind of
Right.
mixed. So when we got evacuated, it was summer down in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
So we got here, we were really dark.
Yeah.
You know, and stuff. And it was my first experience with prejudice.
Yeah.
My first week in school.
Coming back up here.
Coming here. Now I wasn't an American. I was a Mexican American.
Yeah.
And my first week in school, some little freckle-faced girl called me a beaner. And everyone laughed, and I laughed with them. I had no idea she was making fun of me.
You're like, I love beans. Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. She called me a beaner and a greaser. Okay. And everyone laughed and stuff. And I kind of laughed with them. And then I went home and told mom, and she had a ship, basically, pardon my French. And she wanted me to go the next day. Yeah, I know. You guys got some of it from me.
Look at her.
But she wanted to go the next day for me to point out who said it. I was like, no, mom.
Yeah.
Okay, I got enough problems. I'm in a new school. And, you know, it's like, no.
I like that idea, though. Grandma going over to cause a scene,
Yeah.
cause a fuss.
Yeah.
Yeah, because our grandma, like how
So
my mom was describing, our grandpa was a dark Mexican guy. Our grandma looks white.
My mom,
Our grandma looks totally white, like passed for a
very
white woman
pale,
in Washington.
Very pale white, hazel green eyes. And what she did, okay, so her kind of story is she had dark brown hair, okay, and she spoke fluent Spanish too. When they went to D.C., okay, they were given 2 weeks to find an apartment. They were put up in a hotel. They'd look every night, circle all these apartments. They would go to them, and the minute they saw Dad, it was rented.
Yeah.
It was rented. So Dad figured it out after 2 days. So the third day, Mom went, and they immediately rented it to her.
She dyed her hair blonde, too.
So
didn't
then,
she?
as she started meeting wives and stuff, basically Dad was one of the first Hispanics working in government, in foreign affairs and whatever.
We try to describe these pictures to people too, where it's just like a bunch of white guys, just one super dark
guy with his crew
like
cut,
you can't miss him. Like you can't think that guy's not Mexican.
Flat top.
Pictures of him with Castro, pictures of him with Edward R. Morrow, pictures of him, you know, because and anyway, so she ended up meeting all these wives who had gone to Vassar and had gone to Brown. They had gone to all these female universities and colleges.
Yeah.
She was pulled out of high school.
She had never finished high school. She was the oldest of 11. She was the first child and then 4 boys. So my grandma pulled her from school all the time to help take care of the kids.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Which
so
was
she
the
never
norm
graduated.
back then too. Yeah.
She never graduated high school. She was very informed. She had her own radio show. That's how her and Dad met and everything. But so she ended up dyeing her hair blonde, trying to fit in more. Okay, trying to fit in.
Yeah.
So and be accepted a little more.
Yeah, she had to pass as a white woman.
Kind of
Washington,
basically,
D.C. and act like she went to college.
But you look at pictures of us when we were little, we're all dark and she's sitting in the middle and she looks like a ghost.
Yeah.
She
and she used to dress you guys all the same.
Oh,
too.
the girls. Yeah, we had a seamstress that made us jumpers and made us everything the same. Yeah.
So you're here now in the States.
So that was my background, basically. Yeah.
And after you
well,
guys,
the other thing is overseas, your education level's higher.
Yeah.
So when I came here in the third, I think I was either third or fourth grade. I don't remember exactly now, but I was at a 6th, 7th grade level.
Yeah.
So in 4th grade, I was tutoring 6th graders at school in math and reading and stuff. The teacher on Fridays would give out candy bars. He'd ask questions of what we learned during the week. Yeah. And after that first Friday, he made me his assistant. I was
You're all
answering.
high on candy.
I raised my hand because I knew the answer, you know, and I knew the answer. And stuff.
Linda's all hopped up on chocolate.
So basically, yeah, all through school, I had straight A's. It was, you know, it was just, but my brain's that way. You guys are both a lot like you say. I don't know how he remembers everything.
Yeah,
you know, and my brain's just that way. So I ended up graduating high school with honors and stuff, and I had been accepted, but your dad wanted to get married. We had been dating already 4 years. So.
You met Dad in.
Do we want to talk about that?
Met Dad early.
He's 6 years older than I.
Yeah.
I was student body president and 9th grade.
My dad's a creep.
No, you
guys seen Dazed and Confused? He's Matthew McConaughey.
He thought I was my older sister, who was 17 when we met at a dance, at a Halloween dance, and and I looked older anyway.
So you guys met. You had been dating.
We had been dating 4 years.
At what point?
He had always told me when I get a good job, we'll get married.
Yeah.
When I get a good job, we'll get married. So when I was a senior, like he focused on the fire department. He decided that's what he was going to try and do.
Yeah.
So
do you remember what caused that?
Well, I think he told you. He remembers being a kid and seeing the fire, truck going by or the rescue going by or whatever, and saying, "I'm going to be an ambulance man." He used to say.
He said they came to help him when he knocked his teeth out.
Did you feel like? Did you feel any kind of or notice any kind of like change in him and his like motivation when he finally made that decision?
Oh
like,
yeah,
this is what I want to do.
He wanted, and he asked me to help him. I mean, we sat and hand wrote at that time postcards. He went and bought a stack of the postcards pre-stamped from the post office, and we hand wrote. We got a list of. Basically, you didn't even need a list. It was the name of the city, personnel department, the city, and the zip, and that was it. So we just started handwriting them. And
interest cards, like
please notify me of when, I think I typed stickers and that had his phone number and address, and we stuck them on the back and addressed the postcards. And he must have mailed a couple hundred of them. Yeah. And he started going to take tests. Every little city in California that was going to take him.
Yeah. And that's kind of still what you have to do these days.
Pretty
obviously
much,
there's websites and stuff where
it's different now,
can send them out all at once. But that was the way it was done. Even when we came on, it was an interest card that you turned in. You went and picked up at the fire station, then mailed into the city.
We had the list of addresses of all the departments and personnel.
Yeah. Future
Hunter
firefighters
gave it to us. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I'll just real fast forward. So we get married. I have you guys, and we were done. And the Olympics was coming to town. 1984, the Olympics were coming. And Grandpa was still at KMEX, which was owned by Danny Villanueva, who was the ex-Rams kicker. Okay, Channel 34, Noticiero 34. And Danny was named the boxing commissioner. For the Olympics. Okay. So I was like, when will I ever have a chance to be part of something like this again? Yeah. I was working in an investor relation firm, and I told them, I said, as soon as they start hiring, I'm going to go work for the Olympics. And they were like, Linda, you're telling us you're going to be quitting? I said, well, when will I ever get a chance? And sure enough, as soon as the word came out, I applied. Grandpa told Danny. Danny told HR. I got hired, and I started working on the torch relay in 1984. So I worked the torch relay in 1984. You guys were test guinea pigs to see if little kids could hold the torch, because it was the first time ever everyday Americans could pay $1,000 and run a kilometer with the torch, and people were paying for their grandkids and everything. Remember in the parking lot?
You gave us the little Olympic tracksuits.
Yeah, we had
remember
the
with the little shorts,
the dolphin shorts, the tank top.
I should have brought those pictures.
Yeah, and we used to live across the street from a high school football field, and so we would go. Remember, Dad would go running, and we would go around with our bikes.
We had to figure out how little of a kid, because people were buying them for their grandkids, for their kids and stuff. So,
and that was an innovative thing at the time, the torch relay being a thing like that.
Well, and there was a whole thing with Greece, who felt it was commercializing the Olympics. They didn't want to give us the flame. And then at the same time, 1984 was after the U.S. had boycotted the 80 Olympics. And so Russia and China and a lot of the communists were talking about boycotting our Olympics and stuff. So Peter Ubroth's a genius. That's all I can tell you. It's the first Olympics that made money. We created the LA Foundation, the Sports Foundation, all kinds of stuff. But so then from that introduction, working on the torch relay, since it was his baby, it was right next to Peter Ubroth's offices. Yeah. So he kept tabs on it and stuff. So I got to know him. And then I helped government relations a lot when they were negotiating to get the flame, to do all this stuff. So I met the head of government relations. To make a long story short, that led to, when the Olympics was over, meeting other big CEOs, very well-known people. Dr. Armand Hammer. I worked for Dr. Armand Hammer. I worked for Eli Broad. Yeah. Never mind, Peter Ubroth asked me and Judy, who did the torch, to host us the box at the Coliseum for him with all the VIPs.
Yeah.
So every night we met with him at the Biltmore. He gave us a list of who to invite. President Reagan, Mayor Tom Bradley at the time, who was coming. We had to call their protocol people. What's their favorite food? What's their favorite wine? And make sure catering had everything we needed. Make sure everything was ready. So every day of track and field, we were up in the press box hosting all of Peter Ubos
for the biggest event in the world at the time.
And so that's how I made a lot of connections that led to all these other jobs.
And it's that's always kind of been interesting to me. And one of the things that like has always kind of driven me to make quality connections, even when I don't know where it's going to lead or who this person is or whatever, treating people with respect, showing interest in what they do. You never know in talking to people where conversation or that connection is going to lead.
You don't burn bridges.
Yeah.
You try and leave on good terms because you never know when it comes back to you.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Alan Rothenberg, was a commissioner of soccer. So 10 years later in 94, when the World Cup came, I started getting phone calls. I was working again at a different investor relations firm. I'd only been there a year. I worked for the president, and we had a great working relationship. And I started getting a phone call. You have to come. Judy got hired, this time I worked in protocol. So we were in charge of all the delegations from the 24 countries, making sure. So I ended up sitting with programmers. We developed a software that World Cup used to track. It was played in 9 cities across the country.
Yeah.
And we had to track wheels up, wheels down when King Fahd from Saudi Arabia was leaving LA to go to Chicago for a game that Saudi Arabia was playing in.
Yeah.
Or,
it's a massive undertaking.
It was crazy. So it took us about 2 months to perfect. So basically, I explained to the programmers what we needed to know, what gifts that city gave them,
sure.
Anyways,
there's a lot to it. Yeah.
So that, and then from there, did a lot of it, and we're using up a lot of time.
I remember you having to go to all those cities too.
Yeah, I used to travel
all over the place. Yeah.
Well, the first time at the beginning, they gave me Washington D.C., New York, and L.A. But those took so much time traveling. Your dad. I was away a lot. You guys were all still home. So I talked to them, and they ended up giving me Dallas and San Francisco in LA. So that those were like 1-day trips or 2-day trips instead of a week long at a time and stuff. Yeah.
And for the younger listeners, since we did drop a lot of names there, Peter Ubroth was the president of the Olympics committee,
well, he organized the 1984 Olympics.
And Time Magazine Man of the Year.
Yes.
Yeah, and he went on to be the commissioner of baseball.
Yeah.
Yes.
After that, right?
Exactly.
Dr. Armand Hammer,
the
super
Arm &
rich
Hammer
guy, the Arm & Hammer Museum.
He was the head of Occidental Petroleum.
But he had nothing to do with Arm & Hammer. Toothpaste.
No,
Exactly. Nothing to do with baking soda.
No. And then the interesting thing about him, I got hired after the big Mexican City earthquake in 1985 by his PR guy at Occidental Petroleum because they were working with UCLA doctors to send stuff to rebuild the hospital in Mexico City. It had collapsed and they had lost everything. They lost a lot of doctors. There was a Mexican eye doctor here at UCLA who contacted him. And so he ended up making this whole earthquake relief commission and flying everything on the Occidental jets to Mexico City. And his PR guy was too busy with Oxy stuff. So they hired me to be the PR person for the committee. So I was a PR person for the committee. And I don't know if you've seen them, but I have books at home that we made of the trips he did there with photos and everything. And that's how I got to know him and everything. And then later on, he ended up, his wife passed, which is how he had originally gotten his money. And then there was a really great book called Dossier about how they thought he was a Russian spy. And so, later on,
all right.
Wow,
let's reel it in a little bit. We're going off on a Dr. Armand Hammer tangent here.
No. But Dr. Armand Hammer and then Eli Broad just passed last year. He was the head of Sun America.
Yeah. The Broad Museum.
Kaufman and Broad. Yeah.
And through that, you hosted parties for President Clinton, the different
at his home,
political.
Beverwood. Yeah. President Clinton, Vice President Gore, different cabinet members, stuff like that.
Very interesting life that's taken a lot of turns down some very interesting roads.
I started by asking about karate.
Yeah. So let's take it back.
Yes.
Let's take it back to like the beginning of the fire department, like dad getting hired and stuff. Yeah. There's obviously a change, and you're in this relationship where your partner isn't gone half of the time and stuff like that. So obviously, once he got hired, there's an effect on the relationship, right? And an effect on just life in general, the way you guys live life.
Well, the way that I told people for us, we got married after he was hired. So for me, that's all I knew.
How long had he been on by the time you guys got married?
Hired in February. We got married in October.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then.
So he was on probation.
He was on probation. So he worked a lot. I was alone a lot.
Yeah.
And then you were born 10 months later.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pregnant by myself a lot and stuff. And then you were born 14 months later.
Yeah,
That's a whole other
Irish
story.
twins.
So I felt like I had twins, and he was working a lot of overtime.
Sure.
We wanted to get a house. We were in an apartment. And so.
Especially back then.
Yeah.
The culture of the fire department too is when you're a rookie, when you're young on the job, you work. You go in on your days off.
First one in.
You're the first one in, the last one to leave. You went on your days off if you had a drill scheduled or you had like an inventory drill or something like that. You were there on your days off for 3-4 hours going through stuff, going over stuff with the AO that day or your other rookie buddy or something like that. You dedicated a lot of your time off back to the fire department just to learn your job properly and prepare. Especially back then in the late 70s.
Right.
When it's a mixed pot of ethnicities and personalities and stuff like that. Back then, the fire department was really, really, really lily white.
Exactly.
And affirmative action and stuff like that led to a lot of minorities getting hired, and dad being one of those at that late time.
Right.
Forget about all it being physically more difficult, right? All the fittings were heavier, the turnouts weren't as good, the protection wasn't as good, all that stuff. It was a time when if you were Latino or you were black and you went to work, there was a lot of discrimination and racism.
And the Asians.
And the Asians that went on back then. And so on top of being a rookie, on top of all the regular stuff that you have to go through as a rookie, you had to deal with this, animosity, for lack of a better word, from the other guys that you work with.
And they talked to him. And the only reason you're here is because of affirmative action.
Yeah.
He'd come home, he'd be upset, and he would talk about it. And I'd just say, just let it go. Just let it go. Just do your job. They can't do anything to you if you do your job.
Yeah.
And
if
you
it well.
Just do your job, do it well. Something I had learned from Dad, from your grandpa, was always leave somewhere better than when you got there. That's it. That was basically the simple thing. And always treat everybody. Everybody is due respect, from the janitor because they all have their place. We all have our place in this world.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's what I had learned from him.
Something. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That's something I didn't realize about Dad really until we were trying to get on the job, and I go ride out of the station or hang out at the station with him for a day and realize how hard it is to do what he did and how good he was at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To be
Well,
that on point with every single
But part
piece
of that was
everything.
because he studied.
Right.
See, so you're talking about being away, and then when you're home, he would go in the room, and so now he's home.
Yeah.
Okay. But I still have to keep you guys busy because he wanted to study.
Sure,
And
Right.
then he made up index cards with questions and the answer on the back. And by now you guys could read.
Yeah.
So every now and then you guys would run up to him, Dad, and you would read the question and then he'd answer it and you'd look, yeah, okay, or no.
Yeah.
So you guys, we kind of got you guys in to help him study too and stuff, and just to try and keep him part of the family. But but you get used to, as a fireman's wife, going to a lot of places alone.
Yeah.
Okay. Handling everything. And that's part of what we were talking about earlier, is you have to be strong to hold the household down.
Yeah.
To run the household, to handle things that come up, to when they're at the station, when they're away. And if they're one of these guys that like to work overtime and get the extra money, then all the more you have to take care of.
That's one of the the cool things about like being in an organization with the fire department is, you know, you get to know everybody. Everyone kind of becomes like family at the station. You're there, you know, just as much with the guys at the station as you are with your family at home for the most part. And then, you know, these guys that you hung out with and party with, you know, get married, have kids. And it's just like cool to see this. You go through it yourself, and then you see younger guys, you know, they're 5-6 years below you going through it and stuff like that. Did you ever deal with any kind of like postpartum depression or anything while that was happening when you were alone, just like you were saying, for that time?
So,
because I'm sure that's something that wives still to this day deal with, you know what I mean?
Right.
For that simple reason. It's one thing to have a baby and have a husband who goes to work during the day and you're home alone, but then he's home at night and, you know, there's a work home separation.
Yeah.
That doesn't really work the same with the fire department. Just like you said.
Because you can't do a regular schedule. You can't get a nanny for 2 days, 1 day, because the schedule changes.
Yeah.
Every week, every month, it's different days.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was always hard to find when I started working again and stuff. That was always
just find people to watch the kids. Yeah.
Because it wasn't every day. You didn't want to pay for every day when you didn't need it every day, you know, or whatever. So, but the postpartum, I had prepartum. Or a panic attack, I guess, when I was about 8 months pregnant with you. Mm-hmm. Your dad came home one time and I was sitting on the couch crying. He's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? You know, I was like, I'm not ready to be a mom. I don't think
you're 19.
You're never here. You're. And I was like, we lived on the second floor, and I imagined carrying you up the stairs and falling, or we had a balcony dropping you. I freaked myself out, you know, and he had to like calm me down and tell me we can't send them back, you know, or we didn't know. I never knew with any of you if it was a girl or boy, but
was it if mom had Google back then? She's like, can you still?
But after that, after you guys were born, it was a matter for me. Because of my issues I had with my mother. Yeah. Okay. I had learned how to deal with depression, with not having self-confidence. I learned that early on in life. So I am very strong inside as to who I am and stuff. Yeah. But it was difficult having 2 babies, being young. Being at home all the time because I didn't work like the first 2 or 3 years. Okay. And he would come home and I would just say, I need to join a gym. I need to join at that time, the fire bells. We were talking about that in the car. There was in the 70s and 80s, there was a wives group called the Fire Bells. And they met in San Pedro for lunch, and they did fashion shows and raised money for the Widows and Orphans Fund and stuff. And so he says, okay, well then join that, you know, or join
just to be around adults.
I said, I need to do something besides goo goo gaga and dirty diapers and bottles and, you know. Yeah. And so that hit me, was more that I needed a little bit more. So I just needed a break.
And that's why, like, to me, you know, communication is so important in a relationship when you have somebody in this field, because like from this perspective or dad's perspective, you're working your ass off. You know, you're at work, you're getting beat down by the people that are, you know, talking shit to you. You're getting beat down by all the physical work that you have to do throughout the day. The fires were bigger, all the equipment was heavier. Then you're home studying. From this perspective, it feels like you're working your ass off, you know? And without the communication from your spouse to say, hey, I need help with this. This is what I'm dealing with. You don't really, without really talking about it, you kind of look at it and you're like, what are you doing? You're just home, you're chilling at home, you know, taking care of the kids. You don't really realize the amount of work that's involved with taking care of a home. Yeah. I mean, you know, having all the meals, you know, everything that a housewife does, quote unquote, is like a full-time job, you know?
Later on, when you guys started Montessori, you know, and we lived in Inglewood, and I had to get you guys up, get you dressed, get you in the car. I had an old Cutlass with the little window on the back. And when you got on the freeway, there was the carpool, and I'd always take it. And here come the motorcycle. Wave to the cop, guys. So you put your hands up and wave through the window, so he knew I had other people in the car. And then you could see him peel off and go away. But getting you guys to school, then getting to work, then being told you're 5 minutes late, is the same. Yeah. So it's just a matter of respect, communication for the part that each of you play in that relationship.
Yeah.
you know.
Was it difficult making the decision to come back out to work? I know that change in life just in general is difficult. But deciding that you were going to make that change to be able to start working again, and
I did.
Or were you eager to do that? And get the hell out?
I missed what's the word? I guess the intellectual part of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and being around different people, the challenge. You and I are very much alike. The challenge. I'm an extremely competitive individual.
And also you're like 21, 22, like this is...
Well, I went back to work. I was 21.
Right.
And I worked for my first millionaire, which was Carlos Romer, who owned properties and the landscape business and restaurants. And that's where I learned the restaurant business.
Was he the guy that owned the theaters too?
No, he didn't own.
Okay.
He didn't own.
Okay.
He owned the Bat Rack and Donkin's Inn for all the old timers that are listening. Back and down in the marina and the Bat Rack in Santa Monica, and he owned apartments and he had a landscape business. And
all of those restaurants are condos.
He taught me. He taught me everything about business. He was like my business college, and so I learned about the restaurant business. I caught a bookkeeper that had created a false employee and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, and I learned about how rich people kind of stay rich,
manipulate stuff,
have their little slush funds and stuff like that. You know, I learned a lot, and they have their Big Charlie who takes care of business from time to time. You know, so. But
I don't know what Mom's alluding to there. To be honest, that
Mom's got
the whole Big Charlie
breaks
is the guy.
Pretty big guy, like a bodyguard type of.
Who knew?
That took care of stuff. But
that's why it was the Bat Rack, huh?
But so for me, it was a challenge, the needing a little more intellectual stimulation, I guess, and stuff. But at the same time that I was driven to be the best mom, a good mom, because of my experience.
Yeah.
I wanted to be there for you. But Wella, your dad's mom, was more than thrilled to take care of you guys.
Yeah.
You know, so knowing that somebody loving like that was taking care of you guys made it easier for me to go to work, as opposed to having somebody that we didn't know at the house.
Yeah.
Okay. But from time to time we had to have that. So it's a difficult decision. That's another thing husbands don't always understand from their wives.
Yeah.
You know, it became a world where you needed a 2-income to run a decent household, you know, and to buy a house.
It wasn't the 50s anymore.
Right. And so you have to understand, the husbands have to understand too, that the wife is dealing with the feelings of guilt.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, because you're leaving your kid, you know, not with them. Your dad spent more time, I think, with you guys than I did eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we had the boat, I'd come home from work and you guys are back in the boat in the side of the house. Hi, Mom, we were at the lake. We went skiing, you know, and I was at work all day, you know? Yeah. And so there's those feelings of guilt, you know, the feelings of I wasn't there maybe when you took your first step, or I mean, I was with you guys, but your younger brother, he came 6 years later.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't always there, and I was already working in all these big jobs.
Yeah.
You know, but he got to fly, and like he got to go to games in the soccer, the USA versus Brazil. I mean, you guys, there were perks.
I was gonna say, I don't think Carlos is complaining about his upbringing.
There were perks with some of the jobs I had and stuff.
Yeah, that was awesome. Going to World Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I had never been to soccer
and you
before.
got to sit in the VIP area.
Yeah, we were in the press
get
box.
The food and everything.
Yeah,
so,
for USA versus Colombia, which was the famous match where the guy owned gold.
Yeah,
for Colombia, and they killed him.
Kicked it into his own goal.
Yeah.
They killed him back in
We were there for history.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to deal, because obviously, like you know, I do this job and I know the dangers that are involved with it. And when we're on calls and stuff like that, I've felt the heat, and I've been in, you know, scary situations, stuff like that. I want to know what it's like being at home and wondering about that, not knowing, and then you hear, you know, a big, you know, event or like the riots or something like that happens. And then back then there was no cell phones either.
Nope.
So it was all landline. It was the grapevine at the station. It was just a regular landline that you would call, and you know, the phone would ring and somebody would pick it up. Hey, hey, is Benny there? Yeah. Hey, Benny, it's your wife over the PA. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It was the only way to communicate.
Right.
Unless Dad, you know, stopped at a payphone to make a phone call. Hey, I'm okay or whatever. And actually coming up, that was one of the things that I was taught as a young firefighter, as a rookie firefighter, was always keep change in the pocket of your turnouts. Always keep change
At a
in your brush bag.
Yeah.
So that way, if you get deployed or you're someplace for a long time, you need to call home and let them know you're okay.
Yeah.
Or the earthquake or the riots or something like
Right.
that. You could stop at a payphone, drop a dime, and say, "Hey, I'm okay. Don't worry about me." So
So
talk about that a little bit.
So in the beginning, that was also a big fear because when your dad got on 72, no,
77.
77, sorry, 72, no, 77, there was, for the first 5 years, there were 6 years, there was a few deaths. When he got on, when you were talking about the death episode and you were at 26s, and you said Thomas
O. Morrison.
Oh, Morrison. I'm thinking, no, Tommy Taylor.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
a guy
Another
who
one, yeah.
fell through the roof
Yeah,
at
the
Coogie's
Valley.
restaurant.
Coogie's
It was a
restaurant, yeah.
huge thing. And there was pictures, of the guy on the ladder trying to reach him to pull
Yeah.
him out and stuff.
Very
And
famous
so-
fire was an arson fire that burned for a little while.
At
And
a
when they
restaurant,
got there
yeah.
at the restaurant, the roof collapsed. And Tommy Taylor was the
I
AO.
think
Actually had the saw in his
I think
hand.
that was 78. I think that was
Yeah, I
like a
think
year
so.
after your dad had been on.
Yeah.
Then the Proud Bird restaurant with Benjamin Pennell. I'm driving.
LAX.
I'm
Yeah.
driving and the radio's on. I always listen to KNX because grandpa would come on and stuff, your dad. And I mean, my dad. And I'm driving and they said, the Proud Bird fire, apparently we've lost a member of the fire department, firefighter Benjamin. And at that second, it was
Yeah.
like,
Oh my
F,
God. Yeah.
what I'm always complaining using. And I literally pulled over as he said Pennell.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And I sat there and cried,
Yeah.
because for that split second,
Sure.
I felt what it was like to think your dad was gone,
Yeah.
So that one, and then Frank Hotchkiss
Yeah.
at the Army, which is now the training center. And then before that, I think your dad was maybe he was already at 58. I don't remember what station he was at. Steve Hoffman,
Yeah.
which was on duty, off duty.
Yeah.
He was on duty. He had been depressed, a young guy. He had gone camping with us, boating.
Yep.
He used to love playing roughhousing with you guys,
Yeah.
And his mom had died of cancer. So he was really depressed about that. And all of a sudden, one day at the station, they realized they couldn't find him. And they started calling his house and calling. And his dad said, no, he's not home. And he lived by us. He
Yeah.
lived just a few blocks from us. And it turned out he had driven to Castaic and he had gone off the road. He had driven his truck off the road. It had rolled down. He had been thrown from it and apparently was still alive. He crawled back to the truck and lit a flare and lit the cab on fire. And before he got rescued, people had already called in. They had seen the truck and stuff, and he got rescued. And the county called the city
station. Yeah.
to ask, do you know this? And then that's how they found out what had happened to him. And then he was at Brotman, and we went to visit him and stuff. He was burned over like 80% of his body or something. And he ended up passing away.
Yeah. I remember that.
But that was a really tough one because I knew him.
Yeah.
And I went to see him and he grabbed my hand, they were all wrapped and stuff, but he grabbed my hand. Cookies, he said, because he used to love my Toll House chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
And I went home and made him and he passed away before I brought him to him.
Oh man.
So that was really tough. So that goes through your head.
Yeah.
During the riots in 92, I was managing Aunt Kizzy's Back Porch Restaurant in Marina Del Rey.
Yeah.
And when everything happened, you guys were in school, your dad called me real fast, said, go get the boys, go home. Just lock everything up. Nobody knew what was going to happen.
Sure, yeah,
And
it's
the
just sparking
images that
off.
were starting to come on TV were scary.
Yeah.
So I told, Adolph and Mary Doolin owned it. I got to go get my boys. I got to get home, Then in 94, the earthquake, he was working, and the riots, he didn't come home for like 3 days.
Yeah.
So we were just at home, had everything closed. I had my baseball bat, and then the earthquake, he was working. So you just got to know what to do. You got to be prepared. I already knew how to turn off the gas, to the house. I knew I had lived through a big earthquake in Peru as a kid. I mean, I'm familiar with earthquakes. When we first got here, 71, the New Hall.
Yeah.
earthquake.
Yeah.
So I'm I mean, I hate them,
Yeah.
but I'm not so afraid of them. But I knew you got to be prepared.
That's
you know?
another good thing too, though,
And
is
stuff.
that in all the studying that you helped him do and just being around this world,
I
you
felt
do.
safe that I knew first aid. I knew how to do stuff.
Has that ever come in handy, like in regular life? You
Yeah,
know, when Dad wasn't there.
Yeah, and then that gave me an insight as to what you guys go through, which helped me understand some of the things with your dad as well.
What he deals with.
So
yeah.
when you were a baby and I was pregnant with you, the family with a lot of extended family was going to a park in the canyons there in Malibu.
Yeah.
From my uncle's house, and we were like 6 cars on Canaan Doom Road, okay, 2-lane highway.
Yeah.
And this horrendous accident happened 2 cars in front of our caravan. Okay. A Jeep was trying to pass a car that they thought was too slow. It was filled with kids, no roll bar. Okay. And a little Alfa Romero was coming the other way. It ran up the Alfa Romero, flattened the windshield, which cut the guy's neck. And it went and crashed, and it flipped over, threw all the kids all over the highway. Okay. And then the car behind them hit the Jeep after it fell. So you had people everywhere, Canaan Doom Road, 2-lane. Now, in our caravan, we had a couple LA County fire wives. None of the husbands were there. They were all working. So your dad was
Come
working,
on, ladies.
but it was a picnic, so everyone had blankets. Everyone had ice. We had water. We had Brenda, who was a county guy's wife, had a big first aid kit.
Yeah.
And so we got, and again, no cell phones. This is 79 or so, 79, 80 in there. And so we got out, and you just start going, and you start helping, and I mean, it was ugly. It was ugly. I don't remember if anyone passed, but there were broken bones. There were my uncle got the guy out of the car where the windshield, and stuff. And then finally we hear a helicopter, because it was Easter Sunday. So Grandpa was out trying to
2-lane road.
Traffic. Helicopter, 2 paramedics repelled from the helicopter.
Badass.
Okay. But they had 12 victims.
Yeah.
Okay. So they immediately, I remember the guy calling on his radio, we need more help. We need more help. And then we were already tending to some people. So we helped them, Brenda and I, and then a couple of the other adults helped for 15 minutes before they dropped a couple more.
Oh, wow.
And before the fire engines and ambulances started getting
felt like
through.
a lifetime, I'll bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember, they finally thanked us. I held people's heads while they put the neck brace on. I helped them roll a guy onto a backboard, broken bone, the guy
pregnant,
the ankle. Yeah. But your adrenaline's going.
Sure, yeah.
I did everything he asked me to help, what I could help, things. He did all the
Meanwhile, I'm in there like, oh, what's going on?
So that's the precursor to you, right? And then when
I'm in a bloody giant.
They let us go. We get in the cars, and we all decide to go back to Uncle Ruben's house, right? And I get in the car, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I remember my mom. Are you okay? And I started shaking, and I started, and I'm trying to catch my breath, and it was like, holy shit, what just happened?
Yeah.
What did I just do? I just, holy shit, and that, so it gave me an insight to kind of what
I do that after every call.
Maybe in the beginning, I bet you did a couple of times, but yeah. So that experience, and then of course when your grandpa passed, I happened to go to visit them that weekend because your dad was at a baseball tournament with Carlos in Hemet. I didn't feel like going to the desert, as I went to the big desert, but I went to go see Mom and Dad, and got there Friday night. And they were planning their 50th anniversary. And the next morning, we're out with Mom. She's showing us the place. My sisters live there, And we go home to get my checkbook so we can go pay the cake because we were, godparents. And we find my dad. And my sister found him. Yeah. He had a heart attack getting into the shower. Now, we had just talked to him 10 minutes before from the IHOP to see if he wanted anything. And no, I'm watching football and I'm going to take a shower. And then we went by. Thank God we left the young girls in the van. I just ran in to get my checkbook. Yeah. And Gloria ran in to go say hi to Dad. And we could hear the TV with the football games. And then this blood-curdling scream. And so he was half in, half out of the shower. I jumped in the shower and I straighten him out. I cleared his mouth. I started CPR because I know CPR, and worked on him while Gloria called 911. And then they got there, and I had a lot of questions for you once you came later that night.
Yeah.
But they didn't take him out right away. And I was like, get him out of there. I hopped out of the way. It's like, no, they turned him over, and then they got him out. And then they laid him out on the floor. And then they tried to get me out of the room. I said, I'm out. I'm down here by his feet. I'm not interfering. I'm a fireman's wife. This is my dad, just save him. Right. And then they put the monitors on him, and then they never paddled him. And that's what I didn't understand. How come they didn't paddle him? They did the shot, the lidocaine or whatever it is. And everything. And I knew he was gone. I knew he was gone. I knew we had lost him. Okay. But then when you came, I asked you, I said, how come they didn't like hurry and get him out and start? And you explained to me that when they turn him over, because I walked through with you what happened,
Right.
which I think helped me get over it.
Yeah.
And you explained that the blood pools to the lowest point of the body and they wanted to see how long, because we didn't know how long he'd been there. And then they realized he might still live. Yeah. And then you explained the paddling. If you want to explain that.
Yeah. Well, just some rhythms you can shock and some rhythms you can't.
Well, he didn't have any.
Yeah. So
I remember you asking me, well, what did you see the monitor? And I said, it was a new monitor with 3 lines. Yeah. And you asked me, was there any? I said, no, they were all flatline. Yeah. And he goes, you asked me the whole time. And so explain.
The hope with shocking somebody is their heart is doing something funky, right? So the hope is you shock it so that it stops, and then the heart's natural pacemaker kicks back in and starts it beating again. So when you're in asystole, which is nothing happening, no electrical current or anything, shocking isn't going to do anything. Your hope is to shock somebody out of whatever fibrillation or tachycardia that they're in because something is off and firing off strangely. Your hope is to shut that all down so that the SA the actual pacemaker of the heart picks up and starts initiating the beat again. Yeah, but when there's no electrical activity, there's nothing
so the
a shock is going to do.
And it kind of just burns.
The shocking is like a reset. Yeah, it's like hitting the reset button.
You said they gave me
and hoping you started back up with medications. They did
the whole Pulp Fiction thing, with the shot.
Because that's hoping to get something going in the heart, so then you can shock.
Yeah, they did all that.
Yeah,
stuff. So.
But sometimes if somebody's gone and they're gone, there's nothing you can do.
And then you explained to me it was probably a widowmaker, and he had quadruple 5 years before, so he had lasted 5 years after.
And it's one of the reasons that I like to allow family to watch us work.
And my whole thing was I screwed up. I thought I didn't do it right before they got there, and what could I have done more? That's what I kept asking. Yeah. What did I screw up? What could I have done more with? And you to Mom.
No.
He could have been on a treadmill in the hospital and had that heart attack and, and stuff. And so that helped ease me.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I walked through with you that night, because your aunt had a lot of trouble going in the house even and walking down the hall to the room afterwards. But that was a difficult time, but
I wanted to touch real quick on the difference or the feelings that you had when you had a son that came on the fire department.
The very same feelings. Yeah. You worry. I mean, proud moment being at your badge, watching your dad pin the badge on you, and stuff. Yeah. I think your mom could have done it, but okay. But you picked your dad. Okay. So anyways, proud moment, but the same worries, look when you guys were just working ambulance when the towers hit.
Oh yeah.
And I called you guys, be careful, because you didn't know what might happen here.
Sure, yeah.
And stuff, I worry. A mom worries. Yeah. There's a Spanish song that has a phrase that says, at what point do your parents stop taking care of you? Never. You're always worried. You're always taking care. You get the text from me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
At least now it's a cell phone. And I can text you guys, and you guys can answer, I'm good, I'm okay, I'm good, the time, some of the incidents where you guys were all working together, the I don't know if you had about you did the lightning strike at Venice.
Oh yeah, we had him on.
And you were working that day, and you were the train wreck.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
your dad remembers. I don't even think
Yeah,
you guys
Dad was working too.
covered
that
the
was a-
train wreck.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, and your dad was working it.
Well, I was on the Glendale one.
Yeah.
Dad was on the other one.
the
that
Chatsworth,
Chatsworth.
Yeah.
Chatsworth one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked
So-
at Chatsworth at Mac.
Yeah, you were on at Mac, and your dad was there. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
But it's the same. It's the same fear. It's the same hope that you guys are okay, you know. And it's just even that just that motherly instinct for any kid, whether you're a fireman or not, you know,
Yeah.
that you're always okay and that
Yeah.
everything's okay.
We're getting close to time here, but I
Okay.
wanted to just, you know, obviously I have a really great relationship with Bernie. Who's been on the show,
Mhm.
and everyone kind of got to know her. But there are ups and downs in any relationship,
Mhm.
and the tolls that the stressors and stuff that this job has you can definitely take that stuff home and bring it home, and it can definitely have effect on your relationship with your spouse, your kids, all that stuff. In my experience, communication is just the best and biggest thing that you can do to help your relationships when you're on this job.
Can I say
Sure.
one more thing?
Yeah.
So the other really important thing for wives, for spouses, for partners, whatever, you have all your papers in order. You
Mm.
have all your insurances in order.
Yeah.
You have the right beneficiaries. You have the right, you know, whatever it is, you have to have all that in order.
Yeah.
In the old days, you were talking about, you know, the open cabs. There was never the hose that you hook up to the exhaust. They used to breathe that in.
Yeah.
Your dad had cancer insurance. He was so concerned to make sure we were taken care of
Sure. Yeah.
if anything happened to him. And, you know, we've known a couple firemen who divorced and had other relationships who had never changed their paperwork.
Yeah.
And the new partners got nothing.
Yeah.
You know, your pension, your life insurances, you just double check.
Stay on top of that stuff.
Stay
yeah.
on top of it. Make sure you have everything in order. If
Yeah.
you have a house and stuff, create a family trust. Have all of that
Yeah.
shit. Sorry. Have all that,
Look at you.
Have all that
Look
important.
at you. We're
Have all
keeping
that
tabs.
important
You
and
potty mouth.
paperwork
Wow.
in order. That's for every partner, spouse out there listening.
Yeah. You never know.
Or kids, you know, who maybe don't have a mom, but sons of, you know, work that out with your dad,
Yeah.
with whoever is on the department.
Yeah.
Make sure your paperwork's in order.
Yeah. You never know when
Exactly.
stuff
Mhm.
happens. You never
Yeah.
know. And you have to be prepared. It just saves so many headaches for
Yep.
the family, you know, afterwards trying to deal with it all.
Yep.
But yeah, communication, like you have to talk if there's issues at work or something like that, all that stuff, you got to talk about that with your spouse and keep that line of communication open. And for the wives also, like I said, if we're, especially if you're at a busy spot and you're getting your ass kicked every day and you're not really sleeping, and then you come home and there's stuff to take care of at home too, you know, whatever it is, yard work or this or that or the other thing, it's real easy to get locked in and tunnel vision onto all the things that you have going on and not realize what your spouse deals with, you know, physically, mentally, whatever it is.
100%.
Keep those lines of communication open.
Yeah.
There was one of the things in the fire service and in police, divorces are huge. And I think part of that is just people don't communicate the way they should.
Yeah.
What else, man? You got anything else?
Do you remember before this interview, you were worried about not having enough to say?
Yes.
Right? See how easy it was?
Yes.
I told you. Okay.
I stayed up last night trying to think of talking
No,
points.
but you were a wealth of knowledge and information for people who
We could have gone
are coming
another
up in your
hour.
similar situation. You know what I mean? But also to bring it back to you and like what we're doing now.
Mhm.
Green belt, Krav Maga, 5 disciplines. Apparently,
Orange belt taekwondo, orange belt Tang Sudo.
Ah,
That was the first one. That was the one we
Yeah,
did
yeah,
together.
that's right.
We sparred each other. Yeah, and he says he let me win, but
Yeah.
I won all
Yeah.
the time.
but also the
Full grown
the-
woman beating up a 10-year-old, but you know, whatever. No big deal.
14. You were 14.
You have this illustrious career assisting all these, corporate luminaries. But then you walked away from it all
Yeah.
to pursue your passion,
Yes.
which is
Well-
now a hot commodity. But you
Well,
were
it's-
in on it early. My mom can make cakes that don't look like cakes. She can make anything into a cake, basically.
Your son
and she's been doing it for
your
years.
son just asked for the Boba Fett helmet with Baby Yoda on top. That's what he wants in a couple weeks for his birthday.
So my mom walked away from the corporate world,
6 figures job,
to open a shop where she shows people how to do this.
How to do this and sells all cake and candy supplies. And it's actually the only shop in
West LA.
Yeah.
And
really
in 20 miles.
Yeah.
Like 10, 15 miles. Yeah.
So talk about it for a second. Plug it before we get out of here.
So Gloria's Cake and Candy Supplies. My Aunt Gloria, she was my dad's cousin. She was my godmother and my auntie. I was 10 when she started teaching me when we first came. She was like the first Moraga relative that I met here. And then I was 12 when she opened the shop in 1972. So this is the 50-year anniversary of the shop.
Oh, wow. Hey.
Shop. Yeah. So she was retiring. And I mean, all along, I did wedding cakes off and on. You guys, I'd have the house with cakes.
It was a mainstay in our house, man.
Yeah.
Cake decorating.
I made all of their cakes for them. You know, they got to have these neat, I think, incredible cakes. But anyways, growing up and now with my grandkids. And I went in 16 to get some chocolates, to make chocolates for Valentine's Day, to get some molds and stuff. And they went, we didn't think of calling you. My aunt passed in 2012, so my cousins were running it. They were going to close it down. I said, you can't close it down. I remember how hard my aunt worked. She was one of the first women to, Hispanic women to open her business. It was a tiny little shop, and now it was this big shop. And so I said, you can't shut it down. I went home so upset. And your dad said, well, I'd been talking about retiring but right. And so I bought it. I bought it from there. I left my 6-figure. I was working at the Nuveen investment firm at the time in Century City, and bought the shop. And so we're going on, June will be 6 years at our location, the corner of Culver and Meccano in Culver City, LA. It's that weird part.
90 freeway, Culver Boulevard.
Right off the 90 freeway. And we give classes. We're not a bakery. We just sell everything you need.
Everything and anything you need to bake.
So if you look on our Facebook page,
cakes,
Instagram,
candies.
You see pictures of the classes. You can see everything about the shop.
Yeah, you can't just waltz in and get a commission.
We're going to be filming again. They're going to film again from England. I had this lady from England that came and filmed a bit of her documentary and stuff. So
you've been on TikTok.
What is
Jordan Jones? She filmed the summer jobs thing or winter jobs thing.
What is the Instagram and website? Oh, gee.
It's just Gloria's Cake and Candy Supplies. Yeah. So so check it out, guys. Check it out on Instagram. Check it out. Check out the website if you guys have any cakes that you need decorating. Our mom is the one to call.
That's your plug. How do you feel now, though, about the huge proliferation of cakes? Cakes are everywhere.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah,
no, I mean, in COVID, we survived only because more people started baking at home.
Yeah.
So we managed to survive. We're still around. A lot of places closed down.
Yeah.
So I've gotten, there was a place in La Cañada. They drive all the way over here.
Oh, yeah.
I get people from Ventura, from Bakersfield, from San Diego.
They know where to go.
We're by the airport. So I get people from India.
Yeah.
And they have their daughter on FaceTime. And she's telling them what to get. And I get a box. They put everything in it. We tape it up. They take it with them to the airport.
Nice.
Yeah. So, it's, from all over. It's
very proud of you.
Okay.
You guys can, thank you for coming on, ma'am.
I love you.
Appreciate
guys.
it. Love you.
Thank you.
Love you too.
Watch my boys.
You guys can follow me at Danny Gonzo 34 on Instagram and Twitter.
You can follow me at Ben9Humor, Ben number 9 Humor, like Benign Tumor on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow our mom at
Gloria's Cake and Candy Supplies on Instagram and Facebook.
All right.
All right. Follow the show at PRC Pod on Instagram and Twitter, or at PRC Podcast on TikTok. You can also email us if you want to know more things about our mom. Contact prcpod@gmail.com.
And listen, by the time you guys hear this, the Shopify will be up and we'll post the address where you can buy our merch. All right. I promise.
Yes, we do have the shirts. We do intend on selling them. Danny's not just going to hoard them in his home forever. All right.
Call me a whore.
Thank you guys very much.
Later.